Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday night, August 9th, 2021, and we have committee meetings followed by a special session. For Committee of the Whole tonight, we have 3 items to consider, the first of which is face coverings, which you may remember last July, Athens City Council passed a resolution requiring the face masks, and that has since been varied some as we've come through the pandemic. We do have some updates tonight, and Councilmember Grace is going to lead us through some recent information, and then we'll follow up with discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, President Nisley. And I have just a brief PowerPoint. Thank you so much to our government channel folks for getting that up quickly. First of all, this is current CDC Mass Guidance. These are the guiding principles for fully vaccinated people. 1, remember outdoor activities pose minimal risk to fully vaccinated people. Most indoor activities pose low risk, especially in areas where there's low or moderate transmission. Infections happen in only a small proportion of people who are fully vaccinated, even with the Delta variant. Fully vaccinated people who become infected with the Delta variant can transmit it to others. And to reduce the risk of becoming infected with the Delta variant and potentially spreading it to others, the CDC recommends that fully vaccinated people wear a mask in public indoor settings if they are in an area of substantial or high transmission. And on our next slide, this is from the CDC today. As of today, Athens County has reached the level of substantial transmission. So this new guidance would apply to those of us living in Athens County. Just a few more things that I want to point out, just to raise the public's awareness. Cases are exponentially increasing right now across the United States, and we're now averaging more than 100,000 new cases per day. And you can see at the we had a really high peak of cases last winter, and but here in August, we're climbing very sharply again across the U.S. Next, I want to remind people that children under 12 are still not eligible to be vaccinated, and they are thus vulnerable. Child hospitalizations are at the highest point that they have been during this whole pandemic. I know we're tired. We feel like we've been doing this a long time, but hospitalizations of children are higher now than they've ever been, and they're increasing very rapidly. There was a 500% increase in child hospitalizations in the month of July. Now, they are still lower than any other age group. Pediatric admissions are lower, but they are climbing, so we need to be mindful. And finally, I just want to highlight, absolutely, vaccines do work. In this first graph on this page, we have disease incidence. And we have the incidence of COVID in fully vaccinated is the blue. The incidence in unvaccinated is the green. So we have an 8-fold reduction in incidence in vaccinated individuals compared to unvaccinated. Hospitalization, this is where it gets really impressive how amazing our vaccines are. There's a 25-fold reduction in hospitalization from unvaccinated to vaccinated. And it is that same 25-fold reduction in death incidence. Nearly everyone being hospitalized or suffering from serious symptoms of COVID are unvaccinated. So the vaccines do work. But with the current Delta variant, even if individuals have a mild case, vaccinated individuals have the same viral load as unvaccinated individuals, and thus can absolutely spread the disease. And as was noted on the earlier slide, there certainly are vulnerable members of our population. Children, individuals who cannot be vaccinated for health reasons, And we really need to be mindful of those situations. So please, please, please get your vaccine. But also, I think we need to pick up the discussion and talk about returning to a mask requirement in indoor public settings for everyone, vaccinated or not. So that is the actual topic on the table is resuming a requirement even for vaccinated individuals.
Thank you, Councilmember Grace, and especially for the up-to-date information on this. We also have a letter from Leanne Lucas-Helber, who's the new president of Ohio Health Obleness Hospital, and she says they are asking people vaccinated against the coronavirus should resume wearing masks in public indoor spaces in parts of the country where the virus is surging. And they have adopted the masking requirement at all their facilities, so that's for some 25,000 employees throughout the Ohio health system. And then she closes by saying, we appreciate the Athens City Council's continued effort to promote thoughtful and safe public health measures in the fight against the transmission of COVID-19. So I will open it up for comments from council members. Any thoughts on this? Reactions, comments, questions? Councilmember Crowell?
Thank you, President Nisley. I would like additional information perhaps from Member Grace or anyone. I believe that the state of Ohio has preempted our ability to return to a requirement in the city of Athens. Is that correct?
Member Crowell, I believe that state preemption only applies to health departments. And the state Department of Health, Ohio Department of Health, cannot issue guidance that would stay in place. And independent health departments cannot issue orders. They can only issue advisories on that would be maintained. And I need to discuss for sure with our law director, but I don't believe that it actually limits our ability to put a mask order in place. So if this were to come before council next week, I would certainly have a complete discussion with our law director to verify that. But my understanding is that that legislative action applies to health departments.
Okay.
Thank you.
And did I see somebody wanted to make a comment down here? Yes. Councilmember Ziff.
Thank you, President Isley. I just wanted to first thank Member Grace for that excellent information and excellent presentation. I happen to work in a very public setting in a coffee shop in town, and thus I get to interact with a lot of people and I speak to a lot of people, and it doesn't happen very often, but it is very frustrating sometimes to hear people's reluctance to be willing to wear a mask again, especially now that we have had these couple of months of sort of blissful unawareness, sort of being, oh, we don't have to wear a mask, we're okay. But we're realistically getting back to the point where you have to put one back on. Some people like to say that, well, you don't necessarily know that the mask works on COVID, but that's just patently false. I mean, it's not like some incredible micro thing that we've never experienced before. It's the same as everything else. It's a disease that spreads in the air, and these prevent you from breathing a lot of it in. And I don't mean to get overly impassioned about this, but it's an important thing, and I cannot stand seeing some of the misinformation getting spread around with people saying that they don't work or that they somehow make it worse. It's completely absurd. So I know we haven't mandated it on council. That sounds like it might come before us next week. But if you're out and about, please put one on. Please. I mean, I'm begging you to put a mask on your face. It's so simple. So, get off my soapbox.
Thanks. Thank you. Other comments? Yes. Councilmember Smedley.
Thank you, President Nisley. If we do find that the city can do this without any prevention from the recent law that we just talked about, I'd be in support of this. We have too many of our citizens that are still vulnerable, as you mentioned, and appreciate the presentations there, Grace.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Patterson, did you have any comments or?
I just
You're fine.
concur with everything that everyone has said. And look, you can go down to the health department and get the vaccine. The vaccine is available. Get the vaccine. That's probably number one. Get vaccinated. looking at the numbers that Councilmember Grace put up there, should tell the entire story for everyone. But in the meantime, wear a mask. We're about to see our population triple in size on the 19th of August. That's right around the corner. So I'm going to encourage people now, before the mandate comes, when you're going in places that are open to the public, wear a face mask. Plain and simple.
Okay, thank you. All right. If no other comments or questions, then we will move on. And thank you, Councilmember Grace, for following up with that. And as always, we have our ordinances and resolutions always reviewed by the law director, so that will be following. And we appreciate her help with this. The next item of business is titled Opioid Settlement. And we received word late last week, I believe, that we need to consider passing legislation if, as part of the settlement for the national opioid settlement, if we are to take advantage of the settlement monies that will be made available through the state and to different counties in the state. And so we will have for consideration later a resolution, an ordinance 9521 that authorizes the mayor to accept and agree to the material terms of the proposed settlement as summarized in Exhibits 1 and 2, which have been provided to council members, and that verifying also in the ordinance that these discussions occurred in public, and that this ordinance would also have an emergency measure so that it could take effect immediately upon signature, since we have to have this ordinance to the state by this Friday. And part of this settlement is the opioid litigation with AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. Those were the distributors. And $804,865,429 will be provided to the state of Ohio as part of this settlement. And as I understand it, Athens County will be in one of 18 regions in the state, so we will be part of an Athens, Hocking, Vinton, Meigs, Jackson, Gallia, and Lawrence counties that will group together and make decisions on the kinds of programs and activities that we will be moving forward with. There is a list of pre-approved uses of the settlement funds. It includes, and this is a quote from Exhibit 1, it includes a wide range of intervention, treatment, education, and recovery services so the state and its subdivisions can decide what will serve their communities. So we clearly, with our grouping of Southeast Ohio or Appalachian counties, have that ability to decide what's best for our region, and that group will govern what kind of activities they'll be involved in. Are there any comments or questions about this proposed legislation, the ordinance that will come up later on this evening?
President Nisley.
Councilmember Grace, yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this is much needed in our region. The numbers thus far in 2021 for overdose death rates have many of the counties in southern Ohio. We're very fortunate. Athens County is not one of them, but many of the counties surrounding us are in the top 10 overdose rates in the state, and we have record numbers of overdose deaths in our region. And so I really hope that this can go to addressing the really serious need here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. If no other comments or questions, we'll move on to our third agenda item for Committee of the Whole, and that is the solid waste rate increase. And we have with us tonight the Director of Code, David Riggs. Thank you. Thanks.
President Nisley, and good evening, Council. My name is David Riggs, and as some of you know, we met about a year ago to talk about solid waste rates. As we received a contract that was significantly increased the costs of our solid waste. We were trying for a fee rate increase that created a net zero balance in our 760, the solid waste fund. And as we're looking at this, we monitor this all the time. As we're looking at this, we found a small but persistent deficit in our rates. And I went back to try to find out what the cause of that was, and I think there's a couple of slides up here, and sometimes this helps me to be able to see graphs. But as you can see, in 2019, we expected to receive special hall revenue of $75,000, and we hit that goal in 2019. And then COVID hit, and we didn't have students at the university, and we were expecting a rate increase, so we were expecting an anticipated revenue higher than the $75,000, $102,000, and we hit well below that. And then this year, we're seeing that again, where we did have a little bit more with mostly the solid waste revenue comes in from move out, and it was a little more like normal, but nowhere near what you would typically see. And so we were expecting $125,000 in revenue, and we got about half of that, so a little less than half of that. And then the next slide, also because our students weren't here, we have to train the students every year, and so we do that with a carrot and a stick. We try to make sure that they clean up after themselves, and if they don't, we attach trash tickets, and we generate a revenue from that. And because the students weren't here, as you can see, revenue was significantly less than what we had anticipated, and we think this is because of COVID. So if you look at the next slide, this is where we are right now. This is actual data up to June of 2021, and you can see we're about $35,000 below, or in the negative, and we expect to see that negative rate continue. So if we don't do anything by the end of the year, we're going to be $40,000, $50,000. And again, these are guesses because we don't know what's going on, but we think we're going to be $40,000 or $50,000 in the negative, and then we'll have to make up for that in some way in this fund. So one of the things I looked at was a small adjustment to the fees, which would be a 5% increase to all the rates, and then a $2 increase to the recycle fee that goes to people that don't participate in the actual solid waste collection. So if we make those two adjustments, we think we can get back on track. We would like to see, we'll keep monitoring this, staff will keep looking at this to make sure that we're going to stay on course, but we really would like council to look at adjusting the solid waste rates so we can get back to a net zero balance in our 760 solid waste fund.
And council members might remember that this one's a proprietary fund, correct?
Yes, enterprise fund.
And so it's not something where we typically would borrow, or we don't. We tend not to make a practice of borrowing from the general revenue fund to pay that. It's like the income, the revenue generated for the services that are provided needs to balance with the expenses going out.
This fund is supposed to pay for itself, and at this point, it's not.
Yeah. Do we have questions? I see one from Councilmember Smedley, then Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Isley. Thanks for being here tonight, Director Riggs. It seems like we saw our deficit happening, was it in May, I think is what the graph showed. Was any of the COVID funding that we received, the relief funding that we received from the feds, were we able to use that at all to help offset some of these deficits?
We had discussed that. We also have some additional costs this year that should go into this fund. That would be the replacement of the big bellies. So we have some money we have to outlay for that. And I have made some suggestions that maybe we could use COVID funds to cover some of that. I don't know where we are with it.
Mayor Patterson, you have an answer?
So you're referring to the American Rescue Plan dollars?
Yeah, any of the dollars that we received that
Well, the
were related
CARES
to
Act,
COVID.
sorry, the CARES Act funding, we could not. We were limited to what we could use that for. It couldn't be used for any level of revenue replacement. But I see that we do have an opportunity that we can discuss, using the American Rescue Plan dollars, because it does, with the guidance from the Treasury, that it can be used for demonstrable deficits created by the pandemic. And given the work that David has done, which is outstanding, that there might be several ways we can approach this in terms of making this up. I should also add, I mean, David has put a lot of work into this, and this is what David, has done for many years prior to coming here to Athens when he was doing this in the city of Mason, Ohio. So he's no stranger to looking at the revenues and the expenditures that we have, that the city has when it comes to trash recycling.
Appreciate that information. I would certainly support any way of trying to shore this up without passing it along to the residents if we can prevent that. So, appreciate it. But I do appreciate the hard work. I can tell that a lot went into this.
Councilmember Crowe.
Thank you, President Isley. I also appreciate Director Riggs taking a close look before the end of the year at what your budget is doing and trying to, it's got a balance, right? And I appreciate you coming forward with this information. A couple of questions. If COVID caused it and we get beyond COVID, are we worried about then having rates that are too high and that will create then a surplus of money in the garbage fund?
That's something that we should look at. Yes, I don't, and again, we never expected COVID to occur, and we did have a little bit of fat in that fund. It's gone down. We don't have it anymore, and it's because of what's happened in the city in the last 18 months. My recommendation would be to look at the fees every year. Just take another look at them and see if they needed to be adjusted in either direction.
Okay, and one other follow-up if I could. You showed the projections for special halls, for example. They seem to be projected to be considerably higher than previous years. Is there a reason why 125 was projected instead of 75? Or
Yes. We had a 50% increase in 2000 in the rate for solid waste special hauls. So it went up from $7.50 or $8. It went up significantly.
I see. So it
We
wasn't
were
that you anticipated
anticipating
more hauls, it was the
Yes.
amount of revenue that you'd
Correct.
receive. Thank you. I
Correct,
appreciate
yes.
that.
Okay. Councilmember Fall.
Thank you for all the work that you put in on this. When we talked about this last year, you also sent out a matrix of what our garbage rates are compared to many of the other cities and towns around us. And I think that reviewing every year the fees makes sense, because for a lot of years we didn't do any review. And Athens has historically been undervalued with the garbage hauling and stuff. When you compare all the other cities, we get a great deal, and we are like leaders in composting and those sort of things. When you look at the prices, and these are probably even more skewed, is that we get a great deal from what you guys have been doing and contracting for. So it's something that we should for sure support going ahead. Make sure that we support it how it needs to be every year, with an eye of not letting it fall behind. Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Riggs. You mentioned that there might be a fee for folks who have not participated in the collection. I was wondering what percentage of Athens residents wouldn't participate in garbage, trash, recycling pickup?
Sure. So this was one of the ones that was kind of complicated for me. There are a lot of counts that you have for water and sewer that you don't have for solid waste, and that's because we consider commercial solid waste to be like an independent, separate from the residential solid waste. So this would be the folks that get a water and sewer bill, but contract out their solid waste to another entity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I'm sorry, just
Oh,
if I
go
could just
ahead.
add to that, there is currently they currently pay a fee, so this would just be an increase to that.
Okay.
And I believe Auditor Hecht has a comment or to make?
I do.
Good.
I just wanted to remind council, when we're talking about raising these rates, that all of a sudden we're going to be flush, that council's in the process of transferring $150,000 from the general fund into the garbage fund to shore it up. So we've really got some makeup time to do, and it's time to move forward with these rates. I've looked at these rates. It's not up to me at all, but they seem very reasonable. what David has put together in my mind. But yeah, we're actually coming from behind. We're not just deciding to add some extra money in there so we have it available. And if we do want to spend money or need to on anything in the next couple of years, we're not going to have it with this. And, you know, we're really coming from way behind.
Thank you. And we have two comments now, so Councilmember Reisner and then Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, Madam President. I've been on council long enough. I remember when I first came on council, there was actually a debate about whether or not we should actually decrease our rates because the fund was so flush with cash. I think there was a couple of $100,000 in the black at that time. And the idea was, well, we should cut our rates because we're not in business, we don't need to make a profit. I want to say right now I was against that idea because just what's happened now is that you never know when the rainy day fund like that is going to be needed. So I see nothing wrong with building up a surplus. Now, obviously, if it's extreme, we need to adjust rates down, but if we can build up a surplus to have a little bit of a cushion, because it didn't take very long for our cushion at that time to disappear. In fact, it disappeared within about a year. So I think we have to be cautious about how we think we can adjust rates one way or the other. So bear that in mind.
Thanks for the history on that, Councilmember Reisner. Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to point out for the public, and maybe Director Riggs, if he has this number on the top of his head, can confirm this. I believe that for most of us, one container rate, it would be a 73 cents increase over our current rates for one container. And I believe $1.05 increase for those who have two containers. So just to get it down to the, what it really means, it won't impact that recycling fee for individual residences that have the city services, but it'll be 73 cents, I believe, for one container and $1.05 for two containers.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good point. Yes, Councilmember Graves.
Thank you. I was going to make the same point that Member Crowell made, but I do want to clarify that's for owner-occupied units that have either one or two containers, and rental units do have different rates based on the number of occupants that the rental property is zoned for, and those rates would also change, but it's between 1 and 3 units. It's they have 2 containers, so it's the same as an owner-occupied 2 container, which is it goes up $1.05, and then for 4 to 6 occupants, it goes up $1.20. 7 to 9 is, I'm doing math quickly here, from $1.28. So it there's a 5% increase, but for most the owner occupied, it's a very minor increase.
Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Thank you, Director Riggs, for being here.
Thank you.
Got us through a lot of information, and thank you for all the work to prepare for this.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our Finance and Personnel Committee, and that's chaired by Councilmember Crowell and joined by Councilmembers Reisner and Smedley. And our other council members will join us at the table down below, and I know we have instructions from our director of our government channel to make sure we speak up if we're going to make comments from the table below at those microphones. Thanks.
Thank you, President Isley. First item on our agenda for Finance and Personnel tonight is 2021 staffing, position modifications. I think everybody's aware that our Service Safety Director, Andrew Stone, is back in town, and we're starting to get people into the positions that they have been primarily doing for many, many years. The city administration is looking closely at this issue of staffing positions, and on top of having a few resignations recently in the city of Athens, and the city administration is looking at how to not only fill positions, but perhaps reorganize going forward. The first position to discuss tonight is the Chief Information Officer for the city. Mr. David Dudding, who has been with the city for quite a while, has recently resigned. And the city administration is looking at perhaps outsourcing information technology, both most of the positions as well as the management of our network. As a result of this, the CIO position would be eliminated, and the mayor has a plan for how to go forward. Mayor, do you want to tell us more about your?
Sure. Well, you kind of hit on it in that, I'm constantly getting emails from companies that this is what they do for a living, that they are, third-party managers of your IT system. And that doesn't mean that necessarily everything is going to move to the clouds. There's certain things will be maintained here physically. Other things can migrate to the cloud. And it'll be, we want to look at this over a 6-month period of time. The Service Safety Director and Chief Tom Pyle, who's fairly tech savvy as well, the two of them are going to vet a number of these companies and decide whom we might want to enter into a 6-month trial period with. And if things go well, we would enter into a long-term contract. Certainly, we'll have to have council authorization to go through an effort like this. When we get to that point, we would maintain an IT technician position here. We'll increase it 1 pay grade because we're going to increase the responsibilities of that individual as we move forward. And then we also have a system administrator that council has authorized. At this point in time, we're going to have it, keep it on the books within the staffing ordinance, but at this point, keep that unfilled, because this is where we're looking for guidance from whomever we enter into contract with. They may recommend that we have more technicians working in the city, and so we would use that systems administrator for something such as that. So that's the CIO piece of this for council.
And if I understand correctly, the salary that goes to the CIO position might be enough to cover the outsourcing.
That's what we're hoping.
Okay.
I have a comment, just that the IT office takes care of city administration, the mayor's office, police and fire, also the auditor's office, the law director's office, and the courts. And so I'm wondering if, since we've had experience with outsourcing before, if that might be a possibility to solicit input from, and not to make it cumbersome, but just at least solicit comments. Well, it didn't work last time because, or here's what we found, or, and so to be looking for those things as we go to interview other companies, and how we're going to take care of that, I think would be
Yeah, and I will follow up with that if I may.
Collaborative.
That I'll certainly be reaching out through the Mayor's Partnership for Progress and see what other cities, as well as the Ohio Mayor's Alliance, what cities are outsourcing their IT.
it's helpful.
And who's not, who may have done it and went back to having, full-time IT staff.
Sure.
But there
And
are-
maybe there's a solution with full-time IT staff, I don't know. But I hear what Director Stone's saying is a possibility for outsourcing it again. But, just to keep our options open and keep our minds open, I think, yeah.
Yes, Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Crowell. Anytime you have a vacancy, it's a great opportunity to reassess. So I appreciate you guys thinking creatively and trying to see what might be a good fit. I do like the idea of doing a 6-month trial. That seems to make sense. See if it's going to work out for us, and remaining flexible. And as we move forward, it would be interesting to know what the safety measures are in place, obviously, since things are moving to the cloud, and what would go into the cloud versus what would stay. But I expect that would be coming, that information would come later, so that's it. Thank you.
Any other comments? I guess my committee's all over on this side of me. Any other comments from the committee? Hold on just a second, Mr. Delac. Any other comments from other council members?
I have a comment.
Oh, please.
Just to have something to say, I guess. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about this, because our track record with outsourcing, I don't know, it's been kind of, frankly, abysmal. And I'm very, very reluctant to see data that's sensitive, such as social security numbers and other things like that, numbers physically leaving the place. Once they're on the cloud, you don't know where they're at. I mean, you literally have no idea, because the systems that are set up are distributed. Parts of it could be in New Jersey, other parts could be in Los Angeles, some might even be in Tokyo. You don't know. We don't know. The other problem I see is that cloud storage facilities are the ones that the hackers really like to target. They're the big targets. I mean, we've been hacked. We've been breached a couple of times, but we're pretty small fry. It's almost not even worth it, a hacker to come in here. But you have the big guys, they think, well, we'll just send them something that says you're shut down until you pay us $100,000 million. And you know, they're paying. These companies that are being hacked and get ransomware, the way they're getting around it is they're not solving the problem with a better IT solution. They're paying the ransom. Now, there's some people in Congress are saying, well, we need to pass a law to make that illegal. I suspect it already is, and I don't think such a law would even be enforceable, because all you're going to do is just simply drive someone underground. We've been hacked, ransomware, don't tell anybody, we'll pay. So I have reservations about this. I've been in IT for 35 years. I've seen everything coming and going. Yeah. And nothing surprises me anymore, but I just feel better when I could call up David and say, Dave, I got an issue with something here. Can you help me? Ah, sure, Jeff, no problem at all. Yeah. Will I be able to do that if I'm outsourced? I mean, would it be put on hold? All right, we'll get right back to you. That's not the answer I want. What I want is, I want the solution now. You know, and I have a right for that. So, anyway, that's where I stand at the moment. I'm willing to listen to all sides.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Anyone else? Mr. DeLocke, would you like to introduce yourself and comment?
I'm Rob DeLocke, 124 Morris Avenue in Athens. I'm not representing anyone other than myself right now. I just was curious how far this goes. It sounded like from the description of departments supported, maybe it doesn't include the communications and infrastructure for council, or does it? So it does include sort of all IT infrastructure support for the city, including broadcasting the council meetings and other communications relating to that.
It would be complete.
It would, okay. That's all I had.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Thank you. Moving on, the next staffing position to discuss is within the Engineering and Public Works Department. This is more of a possible reorganization. I think that most people are aware that the city has an unfilled position of city engineer and the director of public works. That position does require a professional engineering license. We have an outstanding interim director currently who is overworked, quite frankly, doing 3 or 4 jobs. And the city administration would prefer to hire someone fully qualified to be both the city engineer and the director of public works. To change some other positions, to remove a project assistant position and have the assistant city engineer take over the duties of the project assistant position. The assistant city engineer would then not have to have the oversight duties of contractors and project management. And instead, the city administration would prefer to see a capital projects and construction manager specifically for those duties. The city administration has looked closely at this reorganization and has a number of possible outcomes. It is very difficult to find a professional engineer to come to Athens for this position at the pay grade, the pay rate that they see in Athens. So there is some there's hope, right? But there's also like secondary plans. Mayor, do you want to talk a little bit more about this EPW?
Sure, you hit all the high points.
Okay, well, you can say no, and we can just go to questions if you want. You know.
Councilmember Crowell. There is an alternative plan to that, and that would be to hire a city engineer and then hire an individual who has the management background to manage engineering and public works. As you indicated, it's difficult finding an individual with both qualities. We have been successful, but it's challenging, and even in the larger markets, that tends to be challenging. But we feel that this plan would work to identify that individual, to have the capital projects and construction manager, which would really, that individual doesn't have to have a PE, doesn't have to be a licensed engineer, but that person would oversee all of the multitude of projects, engineering projects that we have going on in the city of Athens. And it would certainly take a lot of the load off of Jessica Dine's shoulders to get this through as soon as possible. She's actually the person who kind of initiated this plan and working this way. Again, the alternative is not the preferred alternative, and it would be to hire two individuals, again, one as the manager basically of engineering and public works, and the other person being the city engineer, which requires being a licensed PE.
Thank you. Committee, any questions for the mayor or discussions? Yes, Member Reisner.
Could we outsource this?
No. Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Crowell. I certainly in support of trying to find, again, once again, creative ways to fill these positions, especially if it means creating a position that's even more attractive to Interim Director Jessica Dine. I see some of the reshifting would have her doing some of the things that she likes to do, and she's done such a stellar job. It would be wonderful to really keep her as long as we can. So yeah, best of luck, and yeah, in support of doing what we need to find the right people.
Yes, Auditor Heck, want to join us?
I just have a quick question. So there's another vacant position over there for an administrative assistant. Is that going to be, it's been vacant for quite a while, which I imagine hasn't helped the workload over there, but is that position going to stay and be filled, and we're just going to change the director position into two?
I believe that's the plan.
And then what about the deputy director position that we haven't had filled?
That deputy director position is the one that we're talking about, that kind of some of those duties get folded into what the assistant engineer is currently doing. And so that one, I believe, the plan would be to, well, we'd keep it on the books, or keep it in the staffing ordinance. Or change that one to what we just described as being the capital projects and construction manager position.
Okay, so you don't really have that all worked out yet?
Not completely.
Okay, so I was just wondering, because we already have those two vacant positions over there, and if you fill those, some of these positions were held while Andy was not here, and on purpose. So we do have a lot of openings right now, I'll grant you that, but some of those were held on purpose, like I said. And so, yeah, that administrative assistant has been empty for quite a while. And so there's two vacant positions, technically three right now. So you want to add another full position in the management level?
Well, again, I believe that it would be, rather than having that assistant that would get
The deputy's position would change title.
to the
Gotcha.
capital projects and construction manager.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Just wondering, planning ahead for the financial part.
Sure.
Thank you, Auditor.
Understood.
Yes, Member
And just
President
wondering
Leslie.
if you have one more copy. We did receive a copy of this proposal shortly before the meeting. Is there another copy for the
There is.
auditor?
There is.
That would probably help. If it's like me, I look at them side by side and say, okay, here's the one, here's the other.
Could I have a copy?
Yeah, and you.
Do you not have a copy? I brought.
No, I don't.
And,
No, I've been slighted.
and the clerk of council
It's
needs
okay.
a,
Yeah.
and the clerk of council needs one too, if you have another one. Thank you.
And I guess the next step, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, please, Member Smedley.
Thank you, Member Prowl.
Thanks.
To Auditor Heck's point, maybe once we have a better, a next step to this would be maybe a grid. You know, option one is to do these positions, this is what it would cost and how it's different from now and that sort of thing. That way we can get a picture of what the financial implications of these changes would be.
We can provide that.
Any other questions or comments, other council members? Okay, moving on to the last position on this agenda item, Arts, Parks, and Recreation. I believe we're all aware that the last day for the current Director of Arts, Parks, and Recreation is Friday. And prior to her resignation, she had requested a facilities operation manager at Arts, Parks, and Recreation. And that position is now vacant. The idea is to hopefully fill that position as soon as possible with a wonderful person who will then make the call on the facilities operation manager. So we don't really have anything, I think, in depth, Mayor, to present today about this, except that position is vacant, a facilities operation manager, and we would wait for a new director be in place to decide how to move forward on that. Mayor?
Thank you. We had an interview today with an individual who's interested in the Director for Arts, Parks, and Recreation position. So again, as you just indicated, you know, we felt it was more important to hire someone to fill the director role, let them take a look at the structure that is in place right now and see if that's the best way to have operations run, staffing down there. And so, yes, so we're not filling that prior to the hire of a new director, that being the facilities operation manager.
I'm sure the city administration is aware and concurs that we're all in support of our lifeguards, and we all want the city pool to be a successful and safe facility. And perhaps having a facilities operation manager will ensure that or certainly help that, move that forward. Committee, any comments or questions? Other members of council, public, or other administrators? Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on now to the second item on our committee, accepting the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission of general property tax. This is a request from the county auditor, Mrs. Thompson, to accept the property tax rates of 2.6 mils for Athens Township and 2.4 mils for Canaan Township. And this has to come through council. I think that is really all the information that I have on that. Yes, Member Reisner?
Yeah, just to give people some background what this is all about. The city of Athens does not levy a property tax, but we do have to maintain the roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that the townships of Athens Township and Canaan Township partially would normally maintain. But since the city occupies almost all of Athens Township, the trustees in that township really maintain very little. However, there's still roads and streets and bridges that need to be maintained. So the funds that normally would go to a township are now being shifted over to the city because we're paying to keep those things up and running and maintained. So I'd just like to bring that out, you know, why this is happening. Why is the county giving us money? Well, they're not really giving us anything. They're just simply reimbursing us for our costs that we're already paying up front. So it's money that we need. Roads are not cheap. So, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Member Reisner, for that clarification and additional information. Any other questions? Yes, Member Smedley?
Thank you, Member Crow. Just for my own education, how is it that they come up with the rate? What's the calculation? If we don't know right, oh, we have a auditor on this.
I'm just going to go up here now. It's a pretty complicated calculation that they do. Part of it is the computation, and part of it's all based on by law, and it's what they call our inside millage limit. So that we cannot, or the county, like when we put a levy on, we can't overtax the residents. So there's a limit depending on what we need, what we're spending on our expenses that Jeff mentioned, of how much money we can charge people for that, beyond our actual costs. And so, yes, I've taken some workshops on that, even from Jill, but I couldn't probably explain it to you. But it's, I will say this, that inside millage that's in this has been the same since I've been in office, so that's at least 20 years. We just haven't changed it. You have to have a pretty good reason to go beyond your millage and ask them to assess more on property taxes for your entity.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Any other questions, council members? Okay, thank you. Moving on, the next item on our agenda is the SOPEC grant. The City of Athens is a member of the Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council, SOPEC. And so we are, as a city, eligible for SOPEC community grants. And the city would like to accept a grant in the amount of $40,000 and turn this money over to the HAPCAP, Hocking, Athens, Perry County Community Action Program, I believe, for to purchase or help offset the cost of purchasing an electric bus for their transportation system. Any questions or comments from the committee? Other council members? Member
I just
Grace.
want to say that it's a great idea.
Thank you, Member Grace. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next item is, I believe, road salt, right, Mr. Reisner?
The salt of the earth.
Salt of the earth. This is an appropriation. Again, our outstanding Director of Public Works has taken a close look at our stock, our storage of road salt, and we need to purchase some more. So this would be an appropriation coming to council for $35,000 to purchase road salt. Any questions from council, from committee? Yes, Mr. Reisner.
How many tons do you get for 35,000?
I don't believe the tonnage was on the tracking sheet. I couldn't see the whole thing, but we can find out for you, Mr. Reisner.
Okay.
Other questions, committee, council? Yes, please.
Yes, I was wondering if you could provide some context as to how this is typically funded. Is it budgeted for annually, and do we see a lot of shifts in terms of how much we order?
You know, since I've been on council, there's been, because it fluctuates so much about how bad your winter is, right? It's how much you've used and then at what point you need to purchase more. So it hasn't been like an annual, in my mind, the same amount. But we could look at that to see, it's a great question, to see what the amounts have been and how this, compares, thank you, with other years. And I'm also interested actually in the cost of how much tonnage you get for that 35K compared to previous years. So we can get that information.
Thank you.
Perhaps the auditor has some information.
Yeah, it changes a lot.
Well, I can give you the numbers so far this year. We budgeted $90,000, and there's about $17,000 left in that account line. And so, that's probably not enough for us to get through the winter. And basically, we still have salt, but they want to fill the bin up, was my understanding from Jessica's email, to, just be full when the winter starts, because that's not the time to order and have salt delivered. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
and auditor, do you have historical data there? Is that 90,000? I mean, again, it also fluctuates what the budget is every year, depending on how much has been used, I imagine.
It does.
Is 90,000 about what is budgeted annually?
I don't, let me see here. I don't always look at these, here we go. Comparison reports, see if I can find that real quick.
Sorry to put you on the spot, auditor.
204. Salt and cinders. This is the current year budget. Last year, our expenses were 47,000.
Okay.
47.4 actual expenses. So, but we're already at 72,000, really 73,000 for this year. So it just depends. We all know how the winters can be, so.
Member Reisner, thank you, auditor, I appreciate that information. Was also mentioning the cost of salt changes too, right? So we do have to look at all those things, but thank you, Member McCary, those are very good questions. Any other comments on this item? Thank you, that's in Finance and Personnel.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Crowell. We'll move on to Planning and Development Committee. That's chaired by Councilmember Fall and joined by Councilmembers Reisner, Grace, and Smedley.
We don't have to move. In fact, I don't have to move at all tonight.
Did it? Yes, they just did that. Oh, well.
Sid the sloth.
The what?
The sloth.
Well, no, it just
I say.
texted me out.
Okay.
We'll pause for just a second. We have brand-new computers tonight, and it locked
It locked me out.
Councilmember Fall out of her materials that are on the computer.
Okay, I just won't use that then. I'll use this. Thank you. Okay. The only item on the agenda is the Special Improvement District, which is another one of these acronyms, SID, Special Improvement District, that the Ohio Revised Code at the state level allows communities to develop to help improve certain districts that would be in the city. This particular one is the Uptown Special Improvement District, and it is a process that is mediated and pushed by the owners of the land, of the owners of property in that improvement district. This is our Uptown one that the mayor has been working on for a lot of years. And this particular improvement district now is at the point where they would like to put forward their agreement that they've been working on. The role of city council is that we've looked at it and we've made recommendations, like go for it. And then they are now going through the process of getting all the signatures. They will then give that to us to approve or deny on a one reading resolution. And basically what this will do is, it's a self-tax process for all the landowners up in the Uptown area to do certain things that we all know that they would like to do. Is to professionalize services such as gum removal, snow removal, those sort of things, to make it all work seamlessly up in the Uptown area. So that will come forward in regular regular ordinance after everybody has gone through and signed it, which is pretty much done. So in the next few weeks, we will probably see this.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Because for the initial service plan for the Uptown
Right.
SID, which, as you indicated, it spells out what that service plan will include, and snow removal, gum removal, graffiti removal, as well as trash and litter from the sidewalks as part of that service plan. The other piece of this is that there's a cost associated with it, and it'll be $10 per linear foot that each property within the SID would be assessed. And that's where the revenue comes from for those particular services. Once council authorizes this petition going out, we'll have to go out and get a minimum of 60% of the property owners in that special improvement district to sign on in the affirmative that they want to pay for those initial services under the service plan. And then it'll come back to council for authorization.
So it's a
It's a process.
It's a process, and we have been working on this for a couple years, so, great.
We 5.5 to be
Right, well,
exact.
2 or 3. And you know, a lot of people have made this really possible uptown and all the people who've been working on it. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Great. Questions? Comments? Okay. Mr. Ziff?
Thank you. I was wondering, you mentioned the professionalizing of these services. Would that mean that this is something that these businesses uptown or property owners would pay to have the city then take care of the sidewalks? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, oh, no, no.
I'm just not totally sure what I'm hearing.
Well, right now, it's kind of on an ad hoc basis of volunteers and people paying for. It will help to professionalize it, as in, instead of everybody who's a landowner, you know, trying to contract separately, it will act as a central contracting with the services or with buying pieces of equipment and those sort of things. So it's like a block, it's like a cooperative in that way. And that will help to make sure there's seamless and all those sort of things.
Cool, that sounds great. Thank you.
With that,
Can you remind us the geographical area of this SID, of what streets it'll go up and down?
I can. It would be, it's basically Carpenter all the way to a little bit beyond Union. And then it would be hemmed in, but not including College and Congress. So it would include all of Carpenter between those allegedly. The way we had to draw it is, as you know, College doesn't go all the way through to Carpenter. It stops at East State Street. So we just drew a line that would go up to, would start at Grosvenor. So from Grosvenor all the way out to Congress. But then for state, Washington and Union, it is between College and Congress. That is the boundaries for that. So it's all the businesses, well, really, it's all the properties.
Right.
It's the property owners that incur this self-imposed assessment that would build up the revenue for the SID itself. So
Does that include City Hall?
it does include City Hall. Municipal governments have the option to also be a payer in there. In Ohio Revised Code, churches are exempt, places of worship are exempt. Municipal buildings or structures are exempt, and Ohio University would be exempt from the SID, which is kind of why we drew it the way we did. But for the city, it would include the armory, the parking garage, and the city building.
Okay. Thank you.
other questions? Member Reyes?
I really appreciate the progress that has been made on this. This is something that the mayor has shown a lot of persistence in getting us to this point with the SID. And just as people who work or spend time uptown know, or probably have observed, if we have a snow event, it's up to each individual business or property owner to maintain clearing of the sidewalks. And it would be really nice to have just a uniform snow removal plan that is done throughout the SID. And so I think that would be great. And I know the city did opt in. We chose to participate. What about the county?
I have not heard recently from the county about being
Yes.
within the SID itself.
I was just wondering about that corner over there. Okay,
I wouldn't
thank
hold
you.
my breath.
We should perhaps encourage them to participate, as that's a highly trafficked section of Uptown sidewalk.
Okay. Any other questions? Great. That's the end of my agenda.
Thank you, Councilmember Fall. We'll turn now to the Transportation Committee that's chaired by Councilmember Reisner and joined by Councilmembers Crowell and Ziff.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one item on the agenda here. Parking regulations, amend Athens City Code to add an appeal process. And I have the section of code and the amendment that would be added to it. So let me read the way the section reads now. Whoever parks in violation of any regulation, Chapter 7.05, not otherwise covered by another section of 7.09.99, shall be deemed guilty of a minor misdemeanor. In lieu of a court appearance, an administrative fine of $30 may be paid within the first 5 days following the time of citation, and an administrative fine of $40 paid after the first 5 days following the time of citation. Every consecutive hour of violation shall be deemed a complete and separate offense. Here is the proposed addition to the code. Any person who wishes to appeal the violation shall visit the Athens Police Department within 120 hours of issuance of the initial citation and receive a minor misdemeanor citation into court, providing notice and an opportunity to be heard, which shall serve as an appeals process. That's how it reads. So, any comments? Suggestions, additions, arguments?
Question, if
Councilmember.
I understand this correctly, each hour is a separate incident, and if it's $30 is a initial fine, would that be multiplied by 10 if it's a 10-hour violation?
That's the way I would read the ordinance as it now stands, yes.
Thank you.
So I guess the incentive there is move your car as quick as possible. Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, Member Reisner. So if I'm understanding this correctly, that the amount of the fine and the nature of that offense, as far as being a new offense every hour, that is in existence, and we're
Oh,
not
yes,
discussing changing
that's
that.
part of the code right now.
Right.
Okay,
The only thing we're discussing changing is allowing or including a formal process for appeal of these. And yes, that process makes sense.
That's correct, and it seems like it's needed. I mean, everyone should have the right to an appeal of some kind, so, yeah, justice should be done, and some people just want to argue in court. I mean, why not? I get a kick out of it. Any other questions or comments? Well, okay, then this committee is adjourned.
Thank you, Councilmember Reisner. We'll now go into special session.
Yay.
And our first item of business under this special session is establishing a quorum, and all members of council are present tonight. We have one ordinance for third reading. This is an ordinance 8621, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to provide initial funding for creating a remote work system for the city of Athens with Sunday Creek Horizons, a consulting firm. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we accept 8621.
Second.
Thank you. I think this is a really cool program that the mayor has been working with the Sunday Creek Horizons, which are people who we've worked with in other entities before. So, so if there's any questions or anything, this is pretty much creating a remote work system. The idea is that once also we get better broadband and those sort of things, that it could build on that sort of backbone too. So is there anything else you would like to add?
I would. I didn't realize before coming to council tonight that this was on the agenda for its third reading. Next Monday, we do have Brent Lane coming before council to speak briefly to the white paper that the Voinovich School has put forward and compiling a lot of data and looking at at trends across the nation when it comes to recruitment and retention of remote workers. So I just want to throw that out there to council that, you know, it would have been nice for this all to line up all on the same night, and that way everyone's getting the full picture, but we'll have to wait until next Monday night to hear the report. But the report goes hand in hand with this effort to have someone whose position, their job is to really help us on that path to retention and recruitment of people who want to live, work, and play here in beautiful Athens, Ohio, and what amenities are needed in order to make that happen. You know, what things, where's our report card not great, and where is our report card great? And I think council would be pleasantly surprised by the information that has been compiled by Brent Lane.
And I think we have a draft of the report, and so we'll have a final version that we can share with council members several days, hopefully before the council meeting, so that they can read through it. And that would be helpful, be prepared. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, and we do have another comment. Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Just that this is money from the American Recovery Act, I believe, that
Yes,
we're
sir.
using, in the amount of $35,000 to push this initiative forward, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Finance.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval of Ordinance 8621. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks. We now have some ordinances for second reading. 8721 is an ordinance closing a portion of Union Street on Sunday, August 22nd, 2021 for Ohio University's Involvement Fair and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. And if no comments or questions,
I don't believe these need to be suspended tonight.
I don't think so. Okay, so we'll move on to Ordinance 8821. This is an ordinance amending Ordinance 3721, authorizing the 2021 paving and repairs project number 337, introduced by Councilmember Reisner. I think we're fine. No comments or questions. We'll move on to the next one. 8921 is an ordinance accepting a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation Critical Grant Award to the Athens City Fire Department, and this is introduced by Councilmember Grace. And if no comments or questions, we'll move on to 9121. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract for the construction of dugouts for Fields 1 and 2 at the West State Street Park, project number 341, and that's introduced by Councilmember Grace. And if no comments, I think we are waiting for some updates, but we'll get those prior to the third reading. And then Ordinance 9221 is an ordinance authorizing the purchase of a dump truck for the Engineering and Public Works Department, and that's introduced by Councilmember Grace. If no comments or questions, we'll move on to 9321. This is an ordinance amending the 2021 appropriation ordinance and authorizing the auditor to make an interfund transfer. And this is introduced by Councilmember Crowell. Yes,
I'd like to make a motion to amend 09321.
Second.
I have a second, okay.
We inadvertently appropriated from the unappropriated balance in Fund 271 for the inflatable movie screen in the amount of $8,000. Although this is not necessary, there is already money in the community center fund for this purchase, and the unappropriated balance is quite low, as the auditor has pointed out, and we don't want to decrease it further. So we'd like to remove that appropriation from 09321.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Crowell. So we have a motion and second to amend 9321 by deleting that $8,000 that was in it. Are there any questions or comments?
Good idea.
Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. We'll now move on to an ordinance for first reading, and this is Ordinance 9521. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept the material terms of the One Ohio Subdivision Settlement pursuant to the One Ohio Memorandum of Understanding and consistent with the terms of the July 21st, 2021 National Opioid Settlement, and to sign the One Ohio Subdivision Participation Form and declaring an emergency. And so as we've described it in the committee, we will be one of, I think, 7 other counties that will join in a region, and this gives the mayor authorization to move forward with this so that we would be able to accept funds and be part of this cooperative group that's going to work together on programming. So what I would need from council members tonight, if this is agreeable after our discussion, I need a motion and second, and then we'll vote on a motion to suspend, and then also a motion to approve.
I move that
Councilmember
we,
Fall.
I move that we suspend rules for 9521.
Okay, and the reason being is that we have to turn
Have to
this
have it.
around to the state by August 13th.
Right,
So-
thank you.
And second, okay, we have a second. And do we have any further discussion on suspending? I don't think, okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Fall.
I move that we adopt 9521. Thank you for doing all the hard work that everybody did at the state level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, a motion and second. Any comments regarding the ordinance? Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that motion carries, and this ordinance has been approved.
Thank you.
And this takes care of all of our items of business tonight during the special session. And so if I could have a motion to adjourn,
I move we adjourn.
and I heard a second. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned at 8:20.